Welcome to the Hank Cisco Show. Today we have special guests, two good friends of mine I met when I was working in the district attorney's office as a county detective. And a husband and wife, a very successful professional people. And it's something that young high school students should be watching here when they tell their stories about their success through life, bringing up a family, pursuing their career. And it's so important today that we have people that are able to dedicate their lives in helping other people. So first I want to introduce Karen Colleta Degennaro. Okay, hi.
Hank, how are you?
And her husband, Albert Al Degennaro, who was an assistant district attorney. Both were assistant DAs in Montgomery County District Attorney's Office, and very successful in their careers. Karen, when I was working in the DA's office, she was up and down the halls and, keeping things going, and they can tell their story that how they met and fell in love. They fell in love with their job, and they fell in love with each other. So first, Karen, tell me something about yourself now, your education and where you're from.
Well, I grew up in White Marsh. I graduated from PW and went
That's Plymouth White Marsh.
Yes,
right.
Plymouth White Marsh. Went to the University of Delaware for college, and then went on to Widener University School of Law. When I left there, when I graduated law school, I went to work for Judge Cirillo in Norristown, who was a Superior Court judge for a number of years. From there, I went right to the District Attorney's Office under Tom Waters, who was the DA at the time. And that's where I met you, Hank.
Right.
And my husband. And was made...
He was assistant DA too, right?
Yes. But when he left the DA's office, I was hired to replace him.
Oh.
So we never actually worked in the same office,
okay.
but we met through our secretaries introduced us.
How about that?
And then I was made head of the sex crimes unit, and I did that for 6 years, prosecuting sexual offenders, rapists, murderers, and left there in 91 when we were having our second child.
Mm-hmm.
Went right to the Office of Children and Youth and
How many children do you have?
We have two.
Two.
Boy and a girl.
Christopher.
Boy and a girl. And their name is?
Christopher and Katie.
Okay.
Christopher named after Christopher Columbus.
How about that?
And St. Christopher.
He's 14 and Katie's 10.
Oh, okay. Now, what do you do now?
Well, when I left the DA's office, I went right to the solicitor's office, the county solicitor's office, and I was assigned to the Office of Children and Youth. And what I did there for the first 6 years of my tenure there, I removed children from abusive and neglectful homes, placed them in foster care, and attempted to rehabilitate their families so we could reunify them. What I'm doing now is terminating parents' rights. Parents who we have removed their children for reasons of abandonment, neglect, or abuse, and they were unable to rehabilitate themselves, and we were unable to reunify the children with their family. What I'm doing now is terminating their rights so that we can have the children adopted into safe, secure, loving, nurturing homes.
Oh, that's so important today.
Yes, it is.
100%. Well, Al, remember you were assistant DA, and when you left the district attorney's office, I remember you left with a record. You didn't lose one case. It was like a fighter. He was undefeated. So, and you joined a law firm after you left the DA's office, right?
That's right.
And who did you work? What the district attorney did you work under?
Then District Attorney Joe Smythe hired me, Hank, when you were
He's
the
now
detective.
a judge.
Right. He hired me in 1984, and within a couple of months of working under him, he became a judge. And then Tom Waters came in as district attorney, and I worked there for a little over 2 years. You're right, I did have an unblemished record. I didn't try as many cases as my wife did, but it was a lot of fun. It was a great job. I really enjoyed the experience, and I met you and got to meet a lot of people in the community because I'm not originally from Montgomery County.
You're from where?
I was born and raised in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
That's way out there.
Central western Pennsylvania. Not a coal mining town, a railroad town. Big Penn State territory. I grew up a Penn State fan. I went to Penn State and came and finished up here in law school at Temple. And then after law school, I came out and started my professional career out here and worked there for a couple years in the DA's office, got to know you, and then left the DA's office and went into private practice for about 5 years with a Norristown firm, then known as Kaufman & Hughes, a good small firm in Norristown. In fact, during that time in Norristown when I was working for that firm, I became involved in the Young Lawyers section, which are the group of lawyers in the Montgomery Bar Association under 35. They call us young lawyers. I'm not a young lawyer anymore, but I was fortunate enough to be chairman of that division. And during my period of activity in private practice, I actually had some fun times with Norristown because the Montgomery County Bar Association and the whole entire Pennsylvania Bar Association has a very successful mock trial program where they go into the schools.
That's where they get the kids from the school to
Exactly.
act like judges and
Act like
tell
lawyers.
us about that.
It's a program that started to interest students statewide in Law Day, which was a celebration of law and society in Pennsylvania. And I'm not sure how long ago it started, but it really began to pick up steam in the late 80s and early 90s. And when I was active, probably from about 1986 to 1991, was really when the Montgomery Bar Association's activity through the Young Lawyers really grew. And basically every school in Montgomery County would have a team, and that team would be comprised of students, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And the school naturally would have a couple of teacher advisors, and every school would be assigned a coach. I didn't have any connection with Norristown, but because I lived in Norristown at the time, I volunteered to coach Norristown High School's team.
And I think you'd come out top.
And Norristown won the county competition and went on to the states and did pretty well. In fact, a couple of the kids on that team went on to become lawyers.
No kidding.
Who I lost track of, but I knew had gone to law school.
See that now that high school students
So
keep studying, and then you can make it.
That's right, this spring. So take advantage of that opportunity. I'm sure Norristown's still in the mock
Right.
trial program.
And you're also president of the Italian Heritage.
That's right. I'm president of the Americans of Italian Heritage Council, Inc., which is a Montgomery County-based organization that's involved in politics and supporting Italian Americans' heritage. A very good group of guys, and Hank, you've been a long-time member of that as well.
I'm always proud of my heritage, and I think everybody should be proud of their heritage.
But I have to put a plug in for what I do now. Now, I left private practice in 1991, and since that time, I've worked as corporate counsel for JP.
Corporate counsel.
Corporate
What's that
counsel. That's just as the lawyers that work in the district attorney's office are called assistant district attorneys. Typically, in the corporate arena, when a company has its own attorney that is an employee and works for them, that's normally titled corporate counsel, which means you provide advice and counsel on corporate matters. For those of you who don't know, JP Mascara & Sons is a company involved in the solid waste industry. You probably know us around here as red trucks with blue elephants that pick up trash at your curbside. But
they have the contract for Norristown, this whole area.
Have the contract for Norristown, have a lot of municipalities, Ambler, Bridgeport, have had Trapp, Collegeville.
I want to put he's putting a plug in for who you work for, Pat Mascara, and I have to say something that, I read an article in the paper. His mother passed away,
right,
and he just talked about growing up and how his mother, helped him out growing up and guiding him and to become successful. I think that's so great where someone that becomes successful and he looks back and the people that helped him on the way up. And I thought that was, I got to call him up and tell him, because that was, I can't put it in writing, but the feeling I got when I read that article about how he praised his mother for bringing up, I think he has somebody, it's a big family, wasn't it?
5 brothers and a sister. And you're right. I mean, everyone obviously loves their mother, but the Mascaras trace all their success, their working tenacity and fortitude and integrity to their parents, who were strong-willed people and provided a lot of guidance and support for them during the years. And it's a successful business. It's a big business, but it's a family business. It's still,
and he's a very charitable organization, and Pat himself. And I think that's just great that someone can honor their parents.
We hope Chris and Katie will do that for us someday.
Right, that's it, right? I think that's great. Now, tell us, You know, I'm a former police officer, and I worked my whole life working in the Norristown Police Department and the District Attorney's Office, working with juvenile. Now, you work with children and youth. What are some of the things that you do that you think that would be interested to know some of the problems and that the people are not aware of the work that you do and what the county does?
A lot of what I do personally is confidential. So that's why what I do in general, many people aren't aware of. The courtrooms are closed to outside visitors, where you can usually go into the courthouse in Norristown and walk into any courtroom and observe. And I know that when I was in the DA's office, we used to have students come in all the time and sit during a trial and observe a trial. In juvenile court, however, everything is confidential, and you're closed, the courtrooms are closed, and you're unable to see what goes on. And they do that for the children so that they can remain anonymous and not everyone can be aware of their family situation, because oftentimes the situations are so dire and upsetting to them that it would be difficult for them to overcome that if it's well known in the public arena. So our agency only gets involved in certain cases, and those cases involve children who were abused either sexually or physically, neglected. Neglect can have many different meanings. Medical neglect, if children are not being taken to the doctor or the dentist. It could be physical neglect, unable to provide them shelter or food. We've had cases where I've had children left alone, 4 months, 6 months old children, left alone overnight, just under a blanket in an abandoned home while mom went out to buy drugs.
And you have the authority to go in and take that child out?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the last thing is abandonment. Sometimes people will leave their children with a neighbor and say, I'll be back in an hour, and 3 days later they're still not back. And in those kinds of situations, we'll come in. We have the authority to come in and remove the child from the situation, place them in foster care, and we're always looking for foster homes.
Oh, yeah. Well, give a plug for that.
Right.
Yeah,
It's very difficult to find good foster parents, and I always thank the foster parents, because without them, we would have no place for these children to go.
Right.
We place them in foster homes, and there's a new recent law that came out. It's called Adoption and Safe Families Act. It's a federal law. And what it does is it limits the amount of time a child is permitted to stay in foster care. And what
foster care.
Right. Yeah. It's trying to force
why
parents.
Is that? Why?
Well, children need permanency, Rock. They need a permanent home. They need constant love and stability. And if you let children languish in foster care, they're really not making that connection that they need for a lifetime of success. And the law states that
Sounds good.
After a certain amount of time, if the parents haven't stepped up to the plate, we will take the child away permanently and place them with a family that's willing to provide them with all the necessities that they require.
Well, I think that's so important. You know, you're talking here, and I'm thinking back. A police officer becomes a police officer, right? And then he wants to become a sergeant. Then he wants like to become a lieutenant, and then he would like to make captain. Then he'd like to make chief. Well, I think a lawyer starts out that I want to first become a lawyer. I want to work in the DA's office, and then someday you want to become a judge. So, you have the experience now. You worked as assistant DA. You're working with people, and you're working with the family. You're getting to know the community, knowing the people, and I think that is really a good basic beginning for someone that's going to become a judge or so. And I think I'm just going to put a plug in. If you run for judge, you got my vote.
Well, I'm not ready for that yet, Hank.
Well, yeah, no, be ready.
Never
Always
know.
be ready.
You never know.
Always in the, you're in the dressing room. You're always in training, and you're ready. When they say, when that bell rings, you start fighting. When the bell comes, they say, well, there's an opportunity there. Go grab it, and you'll be well qualified. I'm sure.
Thank you, Hank.
Now, tell me how you all met here. Now, you're from Altoona.
Right.
Well,
as Karen said, when I worked in the DA's office, I loved the job and really intended on staying a lot longer than I did. But financial considerations forced me to move along because while it's an excellent job and they really do good work for the citizens of Montgomery County, it's not as financially rewarding or as lucrative as private practice is. Hopefully at some point that'll change. Hopefully it's gotten better since I've gone, but that was the reason why I left. And so I decided to leave in late '86, actually left in the beginning of '87. And when
No,
I...
You left in '85.
I'm sorry, '85.
85.
January of '86 I left, right.
Right.
And
That's a husband and
officially-
wife, correcting. See?
And when I left, I went to work for a law firm right across the street. And in fact, three assistant DAs left at the same time. They hired 3 new assistant DAs to come in. We didn't cross paths. I left along with 2 other friends, Steve Heckman and Rick Tompkins, both of whom you know.
Yeah.
And Karen was hired along with 2 other new lawyers, Joe Bresnan, I don't know who the third was. And I came back to the DA's office just to say hello to some friends a couple of weeks later, and my secretary, my former secretary, said, I got to introduce you to this new young assistant DA, this nice
Uh-oh.
young lady, and I met Karen, and the rest is history.
Right. Well,
Although I have to tell you, I swore up and down as a young lawyer that I did not want to marry a lawyer because you eat, sleep, and drink this stuff. And
she
I
already
thought,
corrected you one
when
time.
I come home, well, that's okay. That's not what I meant. When I come home, the last thing in the world I would want to do is have to talk shop and not only burden my wife with my day of legal ease, but
Right.
same token, hear hers. But actually turned out well because we have crazy work schedules, and she can appreciate the time that goes into preparing for trial and the necessary arrangements. Sometimes weeknights, weekends, I go to meetings. I have a crazy schedule, so it's
Plus, we
worked out
don't
very well.
practice the same kind
Right,
of law
right.
at all.
But you know, you do some volunteer work too. When you get an opportunity, and I think you and your son Christopher, and you volunteer where?
Well, I volunteer at his school
Uh-huh.
because first thing I
What
like to
school's
do,
that?
Chestnut Hill Academy.
Okay.
I always put my children first.
Yeah.
That's why even though I'm working very hard in my career, I'm not trying to do anything more than that at this point because the children are the most important focus in my life.
Right.
Al has a very hectic schedule.
Yeah.
And he's not home oftentimes at night. And the kids have schedules. At 14 years old, he has things to do. So he needs someone there all the time. But I volunteer at his school. We just put on a silent auction, and I volunteer at the library. And my husband and I are both committee people for the Republican Party. And we work very hard in that realm as well, attempting to get qualified candidates. And I think you do a little more.
What do you do on that? Sometimes you do some volunteer. I know you do some baseball or.
Well, I've always been active in volunteering as a coach for both of my kids for probably the last 8 or 9 years. This is the first year in 7 or 8 years that I haven't coached a basketball team. I've either coached my son or daughter in basketball, soccer, baseball. So that's been a lot of fun. I did for a long time served on the Triangle Board of Directors with you, which is a good organization that has a basketball tournament and an annual dinner. I've been off that board for a couple of years, still a member. Served for a couple of years on Gwynedd Mercy's President's Council, the college, which was a good organization. Used to be involved in the Lions Club. Still do some things
Right.
in the local community. Right now I'm involved in our local Catholic Church, St. Helena's Parish, is trying to raise funds to build a new church and a new community center.
Well, that's helping people. My mom always told me little slogan: "Do good, and the people move you forward." Okay, and it's the truth. I mean, you work along with people and volunteer. But I have a little surprise also. We're going to surprise that Al, my friend Al, plays the accordion, and I said, "How about if you come over and just play a little number for us?" So while you're hooking up there, I'm going to ask Karen a couple of questions here. Something about while you're hooking up there.
Some of the other
Karen-
things, though, that, Hank, I used to do, I used to be chairman of the Women's Advisory Committee
Okay,
for the
right.
commissioners in Montgomery County. And one of the things we did there, and we are very proud of it, is we made a guide for women, a book, Where to Turn guide for women, giving every option available, agencies, countywide agencies, police departments, phone numbers and locations, so that if you're in trouble, you could pick up this guide at the library. And
Is there any other place other than the library?
I think it was available in most district justice offices and in the library itself. So
Well,
that was
They
very
could call the
interesting.
courthouse and ask information on something
Yes,
like that.
exactly.
That's important. The old story says, "An informed nation's a peaceful nation."
Exactly.
To know where to get help I think
Exactly.
it's very
Because
very
it's okay
important.
for us to always say, go get help, but
Yeah.
people need somebody to tell them where to go to get them.
Right, right. And then when he does he wake you up sometime when he's practicing with the accordion or something? Huh?
Well, our son plays the drums, so
Oh,
this
yeah?
is a lot quieter than the drums.
So, all right. Well, let's. How about if we put him on camera here for what are we going to say?
I'm going to play Lady of Spain.
Lady is that's a good lively number. Hit it. Hey, very good. Oh, that's great. That's great. You know, Karen, today we're talking about problems, juvenile delinquency, and all that. And what do you think are some of the key things that we can do to help the situation? You know, is it a big problem here in the county? I mean, you work in this children and youth. I'm sure there's stories that horror stories that you can't relate, but talk about. But give us a little something that's classic case like.
Well, I really think a mentoring program is very important
What's
for
that?
mentoring program.
Yeah.
To have young adolescents or young teens hook up with an older person in a field that they're interested in and spend some time with them in an attempt to engage them in the job that they're doing and have someone there to help guide them. That's some of the things that we deal with in the Office of Children and Youth are children who don't have adult mentors.
Yeah.
They don't have a father in the home, they don't have a mother in the home, or they're living with grandparents who are elderly and don't have the ability to really get involved in their lives. And I feel strongly about a mentoring program, and when I was in my old position in the Office of Children and Youth, I would get young adolescent girls who were in trouble or getting themselves in trouble and have them follow me around for the day, let them know that a woman could be a
Follow
lawyer.
you on the job,
Yes.
like, oh, that's
Yes, take them to court with me and let them see that a young woman can do anything, anything in the world that she wanted to do, and being a lawyer is one of the options that is always open to a female.
that's a great idea. You know, in fact, they talk to the teachers here that someone's interested, you know, make a contact
Oh, absolutely.
with you or your agency
Right.
and hook up. And you know, old story. If you want to swim, you got to get in the water.
Right.
You know, you
That's
go in there and you
right.
get the experience, and that's how you get the experience. You know.
Right.
And now tell me, what are the classic things of your job now?
Well,
You're taking that. You know, nobody said, well, they pick up the trash in the in the out. But let something happen where the trash don't get picked up for 4 or 5 days or a week, and then you'll see how important the trash man is, right?
well, you know, let me tell you something. The tip of the iceberg is it's a very important service. It's a big part of our business, the municipal collection, where you see the truck driving and the people picking it up. But our industry is so regulated, and there's so many rules and regulations and requirements, and the person driving the truck can only work so many hours because of DOT, and we have to keep time records. And the truck has to meet certain criteria now. The Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection is really cracking down on trash trucks. They're subject to not only inspections by your local police, but when you go to a landfill or a transfer station, you dump. So it's a really regulated industry, and I'm involved in that. And it is a big business. You need to develop landfills, which are permitted by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection or other state agencies, where you can put the trash. It's very common now. We own a trash transfer station right across the Dana Howard Bridge in Bridgeport, where instead of having the collection vehicle drive directly to the landfill and dump its trash, it goes to a midpoint called a transfer station. That trash truck dumps its trash on the tipping floor, and it literally gets transferred into a larger truck because it's economy of scale. Then that larger truck can take a larger amount of trash to a landfill. We have a recycling center. So I'm involved in some environmental and regulatory matters and contracts and business. It's really interesting.
You know, years ago, and I remember the trash trucks used to be separate garbage here and the trash over here, and the trash truck or whatever, garbage truck, whatever, you could smell it before you'd see it, But now I can say that Mascara's, and I'm very proud that the fact that they service Norristown, that we see the truck, and it don't smell when it comes down the alley. So that means a lot. So, we talked, it's been a pleasure, here talking to you,
Thanks for having us.
We
Thank
met
you.
when you first came down to the DA's office, and then I met you, and we continued friendship, and you got successful people. You're bringing up your family. I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you,
And
Hank.
so I just hope that your success continues, and you keep plugging. And I want to see you behind the bench there, with the robe. And so I want to thank Norristown High School for allowing me to come in with the Cisco show and get you to. I want to get so you get to know some of the people in the community. They service this community. And in another week or so, I'll be doing a little investigation about how the hoagie and Zepp started in Norristown. We're going to make some hoagies and Zepps and cheesesteaks. A little history, and so that'll be a thing coming up. So, Karen and Al, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us,
and
Hank.
God bless.
God bless
Right.
you. It's a pleasure.